If you are on a spiritual path, you may have already noticed that the more you fight your ego, the stronger it gets. So what if there is a completely different way to find your true self rather than fighting your ego? Hey, my name is Christian. I've been practicing Zen Buddhism for the past few years, and now I wanna inspire your spiritual practice. Please like the video and follow me for more videos about spirituality, Zen, and meditation practice. In spirituality, one of the first things we come to learn is that if it weren't for the ego, everything would be wonderful. Our ego, which is basically our sense of separate self, which is identified with our thoughts and feelings, creates a false sense of individuality, a seeming separation between us and the Absolute. If it wasn't there, we would be enlightened. No more suffering, no more bad things, just ecstatic bliss all the time. So instead of blaming everything on outer circumstances, other people, politics, whatever, we have made a new enemy, which is our ego. Then we read about fighting the ego, killing the ego, and doing all sorts of mental gymnastics just to get rid of it. I think almost every meditator has had this experience. So we sit down to meditate and we try really hard to get rid of the ego. If you just weren't there, I would be so happy. We do our meditation practice, we try to keep the ego in check, and maybe a good feeling will come up for whatever reason. Then we are so proud of ourselves. We've done a good meditation, we did everything correctly, and now we feel great. Finally, my ego is less strong, and as a result, I feel very happy. But how long does this happiness last? We may even start thinking that we figured something out. When we feel bad, the next time, we just do our little meditation again, we fight our egos again, and afterwards, we will feel good again. We may even think that we are progressing on our spiritual paths, but it usually doesn't last very long before we feel bad again. And when we do, we not only suffer because of our bad feeling, but we also suffer because we have failed, because we thought we would be able to control our experience by fighting the ego, and now we feel crushed and defeated. This is what many spiritual practitioners experience. They are on a real journey, trying to get rid of their egos, trying to force themselves into nirvana, but the only thing that happens is that their egos just put on a new dress called spiritual egos. Instead of opening up to the unknown dimension of life and letting go of control, we try to impose our own motivations and will over reality. We haven't really gone beyond the ego. We haven't put the ego in check or limited its power. None of that. We have just played the same old game with a new story. And what do we do if we become aware of that? We blame the ego again. We make all kinds of plans to do it better next time. We meditate more, we read more spiritual books, and we do everything in order to starve our ego. We are not even attempting to get out of this roller coaster. We just do the same thing again and hope that it will eventually work. And who does all of that? It's the ego, of course. It will feel empowered, it's on a new mission, whatever it is, and it will take your attention away from real spiritual practice, from finding out who you really are, just to fight another imaginary battle in our minds. And by the way, if you are a really serious meditator, you may have figured all of this out already. And now, maybe you are trying to play the game of pretending not to fight the ego, secretly hoping that you'll get toward enlightenment that way. But you already know that you're just lying to yourself, and you probably feel very hopeless about it all. Or maybe you even settle for some sort of superficial idea of spirituality. You may think that the ego is not real, but it stays at that thinking level, but you never realize it for yourself. So how can we get rid of the ego if trying to get rid of it actually strengthens it? Many hundred years ago, there was a Zen master called Bankei, and he once said that if one tries to stop anger, their mind is split between thoughts of anger and thoughts of trying to stop them. And he compared this situation to someone chasing another person who is running away, except that you are both the runner and the one who pursues them. He said when you neither try to stop them nor try to not stop them, that this is the unborn Buddha mind, our true nature. In the same way, if we try to stop our ego from happening, we make it into a real object and we give some sense of reality to it. Then we have made a real object to fight against. But who is it actually who's fighting it? It's like in Bankei's example where we are both the person running away and the one chasing them. We mistakenly identify ourselves with the ego and therefore fight it. But it's all made up. It's like a movie being projected onto a white screen. All kinds of movies can be shown on it, but none of them will ever touch the screen. The screen never actually changes, not before, not during, not after a movie. But if we are attached to the movie on the screen, we might think that it's real, and we suffer all the consequences that come from that. The Buddhist doctrine of non-attachment is important because it basically points to not getting attached to what you perceive in your mind. Your true nature is like the white screen. Everything that's projected onto it is impermanent and relative, always moving, coming and going, but it has no absolute reality to it. Everything that you can witness is just like that. It's constantly moving, grabbing your attention and making you forget your true nature. It doesn't matter what kind of movie is projected. If you are the hero or the bad person, from the viewpoint of the screen, of the absolute, you are neither. No matter what you think yourself to be, you are not that. So whenever you think of yourself as anything, a good ego, a bad ego, whatever, know that you are not that. Oftentimes, letting go of identifications with how we imagine ourselves to be can be really hard. I mean, we are identified with those images, so we think we are them. And yet, every spiritual practice aims to help us to let go of these ideas and images. We really have to be radical with this. Whatever we imagine ourselves to be, we must keep in mind that this is not really us, but only a temporary image that can also feel kinda sticky. So instead of fighting this image, which will only increase our attachment to it, we need to practice non-attachment. Remember what Zen Master Bankei said. He said if we neither try to stop or not stop these thoughts of anger, that's the Buddha mind. So we just look at these thoughts, feelings and images as they come up with equanimity. We don't fight them, we don't deny them, we just observe them as they really are. In order to transcend these ideas and images we have about ourselves, we first need to understand and accept them. And we do this by looking at them just as they are. We don't deny the strong pull they might have over us. We don't try to make them into anything else. We just look. Maybe you think of yourself as a really rotten person. I'm such a bad person. I am not worthy of enlightenment. Good. You just look at that and you don't react to it. Instead of trying to resist this idea by compensating it with another idea that says, if I do such and such, I can become a better person. Trying to make yourself into something else. Trying to overcome feeling like a rotten person. You just look at this idea of yourself and do nothing. If you look at it just as it is, you will see how it pulls you into identification. You will see the mechanism behind it, and you will finally realize that you are not that, but that this is only a made-up image of yourself. The next time this image comes up, you will already know, this is an ego image again. And you will already know what's about to happen, what thoughts are coming up, what feelings are coming up, and you will actually get less and less interested in all of that. You will spend less time and energy dealing with this image. You won't fight it anymore because you don't believe it anymore. If it comes up or doesn't, you don't care. You will have freed yourself from this false image about yourself. And the ego is doing its job anyway. The ego will do ego things, so why should we expect it to do anything else? Just leave it alone and don't try to make it into something else. This will only increase our attachment to it. Because no matter what movie is being projected, the movie screen remains unchanged. Just as your true self remains untouched by the ego. If you're getting entangled in thoughts, ideas, feelings about your ego or about overcoming it, you're not doing spiritual practice. True spiritual practice begins when you turn your attention around, turn your awareness around, and ask yourself who you really are. Don't waste your time fighting your ego. Just look at it, see it as it is, and ask yourself, who are you that's looking at the ego, that's being aware of all of this, and practice this from moment to moment. Alright, I hope this was helpful. Check out my free newsletter, the link is in the description, and make sure not to get lost fighting something that doesn't really exist. I wish you all the best, your friend of the way,